Good morning, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of Creating Creative Estimates by Scott Tarpley on behalf of the Crest Network. Hope you enjoy it.
When does job documentation begin? Well, it begins when the phone rings. The first thing you do when the phone rings is start to take notes and documents about, what you're being told and who's telling you and what's going on with the project. As a business owner, you already know this, but one of the worst things can happen is somebody come in and say, "Well, I made a deal with this guy the other day over at the Johnstone place, and he's selling us that motor for $100." And you're like, "Okay, but we got the bill for 400. Who'd you talk to over there?" Well, I don't know. I didn't get his name. And we've all faced that frustration as a business owner. So when you're keeping your documentation, even as early as when the phone rings, keep names, times of phone calls, and stuff like that. Now, as I said, as the owner or the project consultant or project administrator, if you're the guy in charge there, you don't have time to do that. So you're going to need an assistant in a lot of cases on medium to larger size jobs. You may need an assistant to go with you and keep up with all that documentation as you go. So, just something to keep in mind. If you hear the buzzing in the background, it's a mosquito sprayer coming by. Hopefully it works. Um, Project information sheets. You want good project information when you go out on jobs. You not only want the property information on who called you, but then the correct legal terminology and the legal address of the property itself. So keep up with that. It may not be something you get the first few minutes of the job, but just make sure you get that and take care of it. You need to make a good initial assessment. Your initial assessment would include a quick view of the job, figuring out what you need. If you're in a hotel, such as this may be, how many rooms you've got affected, how many floors you got affected, what are the owner's wishes and demands about speed of the process and how to handle the process. So make a quick assessment, and then you can always follow up in a day or two with a more detailed assessment. When you're drawing and looking at your drawing conditions, I don't have to tell many of you in the group here too much about that, but you've got affected areas and unaffected areas and atmospheric and equipment placements and several different things that you'll need to document to keep up with what's going on in the building. So your goal is to be able to paint a picture to someone who's 1,000 miles away that's never looked at the job before, and to be able to paint that picture with your photographs and your documentation there. We've all seen these before. You've got your moisture content readings and keeping up with those. We do these mostly computerized. This is the residential paper version on these, as well as your daily humidity record. This over here on the right side, again, your paper version for smaller projects, but you'll want to computerize that on commercial projects to make it look better, number one, but make it a lot more proficient, number two. We'll say this on particularly your humidity records: read these things if you're the guy in charge. I've seen a ton of times where people put these out and you're reading them and analyzing them, and their dehumidifier shows it's putting out wetter air than it's taking in. Now, I think that's pretty well scientifically not possible, although there may be a reason for it, but it's probably got a meter problem or a technician problem at that case. But you need to make sure your equipment's operating, but make sure these readings look good before you send them in to folks, because if they don't look good, you'll get smacked upside the head with them. So make sure they do look good. Lots of programs again to do that. Test Sketch, Moisture Mapper has a good one. Trimax has one. Just tons of programs out that can help you sketch buildings and help you with your status and being able to keep up with your moisture content. You see in the sort of the top left corner of the screen the moisture map. If you do a moisture map and color code it as, green being good to go and normal moisture content, and yellow, being in the middle, and red being pretty much saturated, 99 out of 100 consultants will say, no, I don't want that. I want a number on there. I want to know, if it's 99% or if it's 67% or if it's 40%. I want a number on there. So you put 4 or 5 people and you're putting numbers on the page and you're recording those on the document, and 99 out of 100 consultants will say, no, I just need a color-coded map. It's so much easier to look at. So you can't win either way. So again, as we talked a while ago, figure out your process and tell them that's how that you're going to be reporting to them. And as long as it's in a reportable phase and looks good, and you say within the way you normally do it, your life will be easier and your documentation will be more complete. Equipment logs, again, the paper log, just keep up with equipment in, equipment out, how much you're using. Your equipment logs should not include rental equipment if you're renting like a generator from somebody or something like that, unless it's on your price list and you want to include it there. But those are items a lot of times you'll add as an expense and then put a markup on those. Now, some people will get rental equipment and go ahead and charge it out just on the regular rate schedule. Make sure that's addressed in your contract up front, that if you get rental equipment and it falls within the rate schedule, that's how you'll be charging for it, whether it's company owned or not. As long as you address that in your contractual agreement up front or via change order, you should be okay with that either way. Again, a little different version on equipment, keeping up with equipment sheet just on a daily basis. This one's typed in, makes it neater, makes it where you can read it. And then you've got signatures of the folks that are responsible there at the bottom of the page. Equipment placement. Equipment placement maps, a lot of apps that you can use, a lot of different things. This is another color-coded map of where moisture content is in a building, and then you see some squares on there and some dots and this and that on equipment placement. This, again, sort of the old school way of doing this. The new school way and the more high-tech way of doing this would be with a Matterport or 3D imagery camera. That way you don't have to build a map. You just do a 3D image of the property once you get your equipment placed, and boom, you can go through there and see exactly where the equipment is sitting. It's hard to argue with a photograph. If they want that on a daily basis, well, just do 3D photography every day. Boom, there we go. We have some companies that are videoing the entire project once, twice, maybe 3 times a day. Have a couple companies, including ourselves, that wear body cams on their supervisors. So they're recording everything they do on the job all day, every day. So it's a lot of different areas to where you can map equipment and map different stuff out on jobs. But the 3D technology that they've got with products such as Matterport are the latest, greatest trend. But if you got a smaller project, want to do it like this is a great example. Labor logs. Labor logs, again, can be done manually or they can be done computerized. Once again, you'll have consultants say, no, I want a manual written out sheet. And you'll have some that say, well, no, computerized is all right. Once again, figure out the way you're going to do it and what your process is. Have that in your scope of work and in your drawing plan that's submitted up front, and you do it your way and give it to them like that. I have suggested to several consultants in my life that if you want it done the other way, that's fine. Just go ahead and get somebody over here to do that for you, a clerk of the works or somebody like that. But our process is to do it in this fashion. And that usually goes okay. When you get in trouble on that, it's when you try to change your process in the middle of the stream to suit what they're wanting. And then about half the time, they'll change their mind on how they want it. So just be a little careful with that. Daily labor logs, this is about the same one you've seen earlier, but this one's typed out where it's neat and you can see it and you can see the people's names in it. And they've got the hours typed in. You've got their labor code in, so we know how to code their labor and their total hours. And then we've got over here if they're getting per diem or not, if they had PPE or not, if you're charging a small 2% for that person or not, if they were driving a vehicle and what type of vehicle or not. So because you charge for your vehicles, then hotel room numbers, so we know we're showing documentation on why did you have 10 rooms. Well, Kent Brummett was in room 212 and you know the rest of the people was in these rooms. These are the rooms they were in. So a lot of different apps can take care of that. Here's a couple of examples. You see T-sheets on there. You also see the exact time over here on the right side. These are both good computerized apps that can be used. They can be used with multiple people. They keep it on a computerized basis, which makes things a lot easier when it comes time to reporting and billing. The good thing about a lot of these apps is you got multiple kiosks that are very inexpensive. You can see here 2 or 3 different people signing folks up with kiosks. Their names have been pre-put into the little kiosk iPad or machine that it is. So they just simply come up, select their name, hit clock in, and as soon as they hit clock in, it takes a photo of them. And some of them have a little bit of fun with that. And some of you may know this gentleman, pretty funny gentleman, but every time you clock in and out of one of those programs, it takes your photo. As I said earlier, it's hard to argue with a photo. So you say, no, this guy was on the job. He got there at 7 o'clock or whatever time it was, and here's a photo of him when he got there. So, safety meeting. When you're signing people in and they're running down through that line, getting them signed in, you want to have that safety training we talked about a little bit. Again, about 30 seconds, let it go. Just talk to them about not doing stuff like these folks here are doing. Because if the OSHA inspector shows up or somebody gets hurt, you'll get in trouble. You'll also find out that more than anything, you'll get in trouble with the building management or the building safety people when they see you taking shortcuts as well, because they're worried about their loss ratio on the job. Keep your safety trainings brief. Like I said, usually 60 seconds, unless you've got a really particular dangerous project to go over. You can get through it in about 60 seconds. You need a training record of that, because if you don't document that you had safety training, you didn't have safety training. I don't care what you did, you didn't have it. And besides, that young lady that fell off that ladder, she wasn't present when the safety training happened. That'll be the story from her attorney. So you need a training record each and every day of the safety training. Here's my name, here's my signature. I've been trained on the topic above. The subject was ladder safety. So that proves that's a document that is showing and documenting that that young lady that fell off the ladder was indeed in that training. Daily summaries, I talked about those a little before. Try to do them consistently at pretty much the same time. Not 6 on the dot or whatever, but just mid morning, mid afternoon, evening. Um, don't send. I don't recommend sending summaries late at night. You're running a business. Let's keep it that way. Uh, on mitigation projects, they do tend to run long hours, but 6 to 6, 7 to 7, somewhere in that range. If you're working 12-hour days, I think you can have a 12-hour span on that. If you're working 10-hour days, you probably can cut that back a little bit, but keep them at normal times. One problem you're going to get into if you're sending them into wee hours of the morning is that gives the recipient the perfect excuse of saying, I didn't see it or I didn't read it. Because by the time I woke up the next morning, I had 40 other emails and I just never got back down to that one. So keep them at about the same time. You can draft them at 1 o'clock in the morning if that's when you're working. Just set them up to be sent out at normal times. Also, keep emails, text messages, stuff like that. Keep them to be something you'd want the judge and your mother to read in open court. Keep them nice. Keep them professional. Don't send them when you're angry. Don't send them when you're drinking. Don't send them when it's extremely late at night. So try to keep them professional, again, like you'd want your mother and the judge both to read in open court. That's why you're doing the daily summary. That's why you're doing the communication in the email, is to have documentation so others can read it if that becomes necessary to get you paid. Now, you do want to get paid, I think. Am I right about that? Of course you do, because we've all figured out today we're in the business to make money, not in the business to dry buildings. This is a different type of summary. This is an hourly summary, very, very important document. This is an hourly summary that the supervisor would do. You remember the young ladies with the red vest on in the slide before when they were signing people into the kiosk? Those ladies with red vests are supervisors. Now they've got anywhere from 5 to probably maximum of 10, depending on the project, employees working under them, and they're a team, and we code those teams by color coding. So they'll have a name tag, and their name tag may be purple, it may be green, but we color code those teams so we can tell from a mile away whose team each person's on the job zone. We want that supervisor to keep up with exactly what they're doing each hour, because it inadvertently happened about 3 weeks into the project. They'll say, well, the tenant's going to pay for this space and the building owner is going to pay for this space. We need you to separate that out. And if you don't know what they were doing each hour and which area they were cleaning in, it's going to be a nightmare to go back and try to recreate that paperwork. So you can see this one's fairly detailed. They give you exactly where they were going and exactly what they were doing and which apartment number they were working in. So if we needed to go back and separate that out, we would put together a cost projection of what that's going to cost. We would submit a change order for that cost projection. And let's say we projected that was going to go back and pull that out, it's going to cost, $3,500. We would say, well, this is going to run between $3,500 and $6,000, to get this cost projection pulled out. Would you like me to do that? And if so, we'll submit a change order for that. So, but you got to have the paperwork to get it done. So, one important part about this that we've seen happen on several jobs with some of the consultants is they want the supervisor to send them a copy of their summary hourly. We do not allow that. That is, it's not our process. It's not the way we do it. Our supervisors send us this document, then someone in the office will put that document together and send that out. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about why that we do it that way. And we simply just do not give them the option of being able to get that. And we've had some come up and say, well, can we just go by and take a picture of their field notes every hour? And the answer to that's no. That's not the way we do business. If you want to know what every employee here is doing every hour, bring 20 or 30 more of your people over and keep up with everybody. But we'll put together our summary when we get at the appropriate time. And again, we're going to talk about that a little more just in a little bit. But formalize your daily summaries with your crew. Provide a timely correspondence. Summaries from today need to go in tonight or by 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, whatever your procedure is. They don't need to go out 4 days, 5 days, 6 days from now. Be as detailed and clear on your drying plan and your scope of work as you can be, and and keep up with the number of the employees and stuff you got. A few of the jobs you see here that we're looking at gym floor drying here. That's large loss for the Tigers. It looks like floor, as you can see in the bottom left, is pretty wrinkled. If you look at the center picture, it's pretty straight. And they were able to play ball without refinishing that floor. A couple of dehumidifiers on it, a lot of heat. That they on the bottom right, that black in there above the injector dries is a plastic barrier across there, so it tinted the floor. So here's an example of a poorly written scope of work. It has 3 lines on it, or 4 lines basically. The first one's typed in, which often gets overlooked when you're writing some stuff in. But remove ceiling tiles, begin detailed estimating process, and provide debris removal. That is a very poor scope of work. It don't say where you're providing debris removal. It don't say where you're doing this, that, or the other. So the scope needs to be considerably more detailed than that. So, talking about communications, can be by email, text, or spoken. Spoken always needs documented and backed up in writing, but all correspondence should be directed to include the owner or the manager of the building. They're your client. You don't want to start communicating directly with the adjuster or directly with the consultant. It cuts the client out. The client stays in the dark, and they're the one paying you. And the consultant and the adjuster is going to go back and tell them in a lot of cases that you're just charging too much anyway. So you've got to keep that owner or manager in the loop. Sort of already touched base on this. Make sure your emails are done at the appropriate time of night and they're consistent, and that. Here's one reason you don't want the project managers showing their daily field notes and that kind of stuff to the adjusters or consultants. They may have typos in them. They may use shorthand. They may use text jargon to write their notes in it. It's a lot of things they may do. Their notes may not even be discernible. So, we want these notes to go back to the appropriate people who can put them in the appropriate manner to get sent out at the appropriate time. So these little spelling things, I know all of you has been on Facebook when you've seen 30% of the people on there jump down, somebody on Facebook because they misspelled a couple of words, even though they plainly knew what they meant. So that's the reason we don't want the field notes going to the insurance companies. Once those field notes are deciphered and put into order, they're discarded, and then the formal document becomes the daily summary sheet that is sent in by the people who are designated to do that. some more things that just concerning in the English language world that you've got to worry about, but embarrassing if you have to explain in court. Now you're charging $75 an hour for this person, and they can't spell occurred. They can't spell rigid, or they said they used the wrong verbiage. Uh, but no, but they drive a truck pretty good. So that's going to be your response. But if you can make that look better, it's a little better. Reimbursable expenses. Try to keep your tickets clean. Try to keep your tickets not only clean and orderly where they're visible, but if you're charging a percentage for small tools, then you don't want to add the tools that you're buying that you're going to charge that percentage on the same ticket with materials and supplies. If they go to the Home Depot and buy that stuff, have them separate that out. If you want fuel ticket, they're going to want details such as this on the fuel ticket, on how much that was, so you can easily get reimbursed. You don't need fuel ticket with sun drops and beer on it. And I know you can redact that, but that always 100% of the time brings up a question. What did you redact on that? What was that? And the answer is always, well, I don't know, but all we charged for was the fuel. But it's just an unnecessary event. Just keep those tickets cleaned up. Materials or consumables are sort of the same way. The only difference in the two is you'll have your materials and consumables that are on your supply trailer that you bring that may be on your price schedule, and then you'll have one that you have ordered and shipped in that you may charge for in bulk. Just depends on how your contract's written and how you got that going on. So it's a little chart to keep up with all of that. That is the paper version of it, but just keep up with what you've got coming off your trailer and what you're using on the job site. So we talked about subcontractors. Have a written contract with your subcontractor. You may be turning their bill in and just submitting it for reimbursement with a markup. You still need to get their pricing approved, because if you didn't have their price on your contract, that's a change order. Unless their pricing is included on what you've already submitted in. So make sure you don't get caught into that. So a couple of 3 more jobs is got a hotel over on the left, and then over here on the far right got a skating rink in Atlanta, college university in the middle, just a few jobs just going around, a hospital in Nashville on the lower right. Just some photos of a few commercial jobs that go on with some desk and dehumidifiers running in them and stuff such as that. So we talked a little about Matterport. That is one of your better tools of technology. It's hard to argue with a picture. That gives you mapping of the project. You can do the Matterport every day if you need to. Depending on how big the building is and how many Matterport systems you have, you may have to get more in, but it gives excellent photo documentation, and you can charge for it. So no pics, no happen. So take a lot of good pics, and Matterport's a good way of doing that. So you can't really have too much documentation, but you can have your documentation in a manner to where it is not real usable. If you get a stack like's in the bottom left corner and you're an adjuster and you don't have a good index on it and it's sort of disarrayed and all that kind of stuff, it's going to get stacked all right. It's going to get stacked in the corner of the room. And he's going to do the other 300 files in front of it that are easy to discern first. And then he'll get around to that one when he has time to. And that's certainly not what you want to happen about your with your bill, is for it to get stacked into the corner. So that's what they'll do with your bill if you send it in disarray. So that is not what you want to happen. So don't forget to document the fact that you documented, and you charge for that. So, you need to document. We had two girls putting together documentation today, or two guys putting together documentation today, and they spent 4 hours on it. Don't average them out. Seen an instance of that a few weeks ago where someone was saying, well, we've got these girls working, we're just putting, half an hour apiece for each one on each job. That don't work. Keep it real. If they worked on the job a half hour, put that down. If they worked on it 3 hours, put that down. So, but keep your documentation stuff in order as well. So, some of the fast, easy, effective solutions to in-house documentation handling. There is a lot of ways to do it in-house, but also your people that you're using in-house are probably already busy. So have a backup plan for outsourcing that, or if you need to add 3 or 4 people or 5 or 10 people on the spur of the moment, that you can do that. The one of the main things you don't want to get behind on the job is your documentation. There's really 3 things you don't want to get behind on the job: your contract, your documentation, and your communication. If you let any of those 3 get behind, then you're going to be in deep trouble on the job when it comes to getting paid. Now, once again, as business owners and entrepreneurs, that goes against everything we ever thought. We thought the biggest thing was to get some equipment there and to get something in the building and get the water sucked up and get the fire department gone, and let's get this debris picked up off the floor. And you're really, really, really looking at it from working in the business instead of working on the business. As a business owner and you're working on the business, your contracts, your documentation, and your communication are the most important parts of your business. You'll always have that consultant that's looking for something else. So, a lot of different companies out there that help with documentation, and this is just several of them that are out there. They all have different aspects. They all have different bells and different whistles that they use for documentation. Some of them are automated, some of them are not. There is no one program that's perfect for every situation. Every job we go to is different. So you have to choose what's working good for you. Talk to other people in the industry and see what they're using. Talk to Dick and Bill and see what they recommend and how they recommend to use which product on which job. They'll have a lot of good insight on that when it comes to documentation as well. So 10M Pro and Microsoft Excel are a couple of good things on commercial jobs to use. They both are good. Time and material is mostly the preferred choice on larger commercial jobs, although programs like Exuctimate or something like that may work well on smaller projects that you do. It may work well on a large project, but it's generally better suited for the time and material on larger projects. So, sort of just went over that about which one to use for large loss. Again, it depends on the large and it depends on the loss. If you've got 5 different line items on a large loss, then Xactimate may work fine. If you've got a normal large loss where you're going to have thousands of line items, Xactimate may wind up being the wrong tool in the toolbox for that particular application. Actual versus estimation. If you're estimating a large loss job, that should be on the rebuild, or that should be I'm giving a bid for it to see if I get it. That would be estimating. Actual would be if you're doing the mitigation and sending an invoice for it, would be your actual costing on that. So depends on which way you're doing it. There are some people now who won't do mitigation without giving the actual bid on the job before they do mitigation. I guess they've gotten a little tired of getting stuck on it. So But just decide what your program is, know the rules of the game, what's your procedure, what you're going to do, make sure it's in your contract, make sure it's in your documentation, and make sure it's in your communication, and make sure those things are appropriately dispersed when they need to be and in a very timely fashion. So a little bit of a subcontractor there and some dumperage going on. Another little job in Nashville, Tennessee. A little debris going on. Pretty good sized job there. Tell by the amount of porta potties that are there. So, talking about different materials and using bags and stuff like that here, and how you keep up from them, whether you keep up with them by the boxes or by the bag, or what you keep up with them in bulk shipment. Again, just have your procedure together and go from there. Your invoicing on a mitigation job, you should give them a great burn rate on the 4th day for the first 3 days. Now your first day is going to have a lot of mobilization in it. Your second day is going to have be a little chaotic, usually is. Your third day is going to even out. It's going to be about where you're going to be for a few days, normally speaking. So if you give them that on the 4th day, at least I can get a thumbnail sketch of what this job is going to run per day. On the 8th day, you should give an invoice for the first 7 days. That should be a hard invoice that is 95% accurate. There's going to be some stuff that you don't have bills in on yet that you can't bill for, i.e. a dumpster company, hadn't got you the bill yet. Maybe the fuel company hadn't got you bill for fuel yet, but that one should be fairly accurate. And the things you don't have the bills in on yet, they'll go on the next week's bill. But this should be an invoice for the first 7 days, and get that turned in, and do it every 7 days thereafter. So this is the invoice summary and what it should look like. You've got labor, associated labor fees, materials, equipment, and reimbursable items. It's just pretty simple, 5 or 6 line items, $1 million and a little bit of change on it. And then obviously your pages behind that will have a tab for each category, and it'll have a backup for each category that's on that tab. Every invoice should have an index. You couldn't read a book without an index, so it should have an index. So every how many tabs you got in your book, you should have an index. And I say book cautiously. Most of these are wireless now, and that's fine, but still have the index there for your wireless stuff, because a lot of your consultants will break this down. They have a department that handles labor. That's all they handle. They have another department that handles equipment, another department that would handle your drying charts and drying conditions. So they have different departments that do different things. So they don't want each department to have to look through the entire bit of documentation when they can divide this by 10 and get it knocked out quicker. And that's ultimately what you normally want, is for them to get it knocked out quicker. So help them out a little bit with that. Give them a index to where they can find stuff a little quicker. Today, bad documentation ends. This far, no further. Start good documentation. Remember that your job is to make money. Your job is not to dry buildings, it's to make money. And you're going to make money by having communication, contract, documentation, and communication, the CDC. So do those 3 things, and you can go out there and make some money. So I'm Scott Tarpley. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. On behalf of the Crest Network, have a good